Hey everybody, it's KHANTENT!
Content.
And we have just watched episodes 6 and 7 of Babylon, the first show that we're returning to out of all of these shows. And the reason we're doing that is that this show, it has concluded its second arc, and now it is apparently on hiatus until late December. So our original plan would have been to cover every 4 episodes like we were doing with other shows, but I mean, if it's not going to have any new ones for a while, and somebody keyed me in that these 2 episodes were exceptionally twist heavy and crazy. Obviously, since this is just episode 6 and 7, this is going to be all spoilers. You would have already heard our recommendations of this show in the previous video. Highly recommended. It is one of the best shows of the season.
Indeed.
Nate, let's just get into talking about these episodes.
Do you want to do them one at a time, or should we go chronologically through them? Because again, like these are so many twists happen in a row. That's probably the best way to handle it. Because I wouldn't want to just jump to the end and leave everybody totally not understanding. I mean, you've probably seen the show, but okay, let's just begin. So where we last left our heroes, Zen, Seizaki Zen, and company. The debate was going to happen very soon between all the parliamentary candidates, or some of them at least, the representatives of the parties in shit. What's the name of the town that this place takes place in?
Shiniki.
Shiniki. That's right. And the mayor boy who has legalized suicide for that for Shiniki, and lots of Japan is feeling the vibe and doing so as well, quadrupling the total suicide rate. They're going to debate it and they're going to hash it out. And our boys have been trying to find a way, as the little police task force, they've been trying to find a legal way to find him and arrest him. And where we join our heroes again here, one of the investigators was just killed. They're like sexual crime related detective or whatever. He was just intercepted by Magase Ai, our de facto major antagonist, and now our boys have failed. They have failed to find any grounds with which to link Itsuki to link it with the crime of abetting suicide, and so they've been totally cut. There's nothing they can do in the lead up to the debate. So the debate is about to happen, and the first thing I was going to say was I will be very upset if this show is so logically tight that I think you'll see my standards are going to be pretty damn high for any kind of things that shouldn't be or don't quite make sense, because this show has established it is logically solid. I've been loving that, and so I feel it rises to the standard where I can lay out some decent criticisms when things don't match up to that, because I respect it that much. This is a quality show. But in any case, I was very glad that they showed us clearly that they did everything they could. This whole team was trying to legally find a way to intercept Itsuki, because if there was some shenanigans where like they really wanted to arrest Itsuki and they really felt they could, but like they just couldn't do it before he got on TV or some bullshit like that, I would have been angry, because this is more important than that, and other shows might do shit like that. But no, they were very clear. We cannot find any way to stop him. That's why the debate will happen. Although I have one small point about that, which is just that being the case, the fact that the team can't find any way to stop Itsuki legally, Zen, our boy, decides to go rogue, and the new plan is we are going to kidnap Itsuki because we feel he's doing bad things. We're doing street justice now. He still feels like he's doing the right thing. He's just willing to take personal, illegalities in order to get to his higher sense of justice or whatever. He's not one of these, purely lawful boys. But their plan is, okay, we're gonna kidnap him after the debate, because we're really sure that there's no possible way he's gonna make any argument that's gonna convince anybody. I mean, surely, you also felt like, well, that doesn't seem like the best possible way to prevent his message from getting out. Any thoughts?
I didn't really think of it as that they were doing it tactically in that sense. I thought it was more like this is just the only time they could get him was after the debate.
Why?
They could lead him away.
They already have decided they're going to do illegal things, and maybe they feel his guard will be down after the debate. That's
kind of what I figure, because the way they sort of get him, or they attempt, is that they just kind of lead him away. Like the people who are his like personal guards after the thing is over have been swapped out with our guy's men, essentially. So I assume that they just sent the police who he would trust and would think were just going to protect him, and then they were going to spring a kidnapping on him, when in a place where nobody could do anything about it. And I don't know, maybe they just didn't have access to him until the debate was happening. They didn't want to do it in the middle of the broadcast because it would be like a huge
obviously
scandal.
Not during it, probably.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's just that considering we're so detailed, this is a minor point. I just kind of wish they'd given a reason as to really why they didn't quite. But I'm willing to accept the premises used. There was probably some very good reason. There must have been, and so the debate happens.
Yeah. So this is another thing. We talked about how one of the things that's great about this show is how it can subvert your expectations by just kind of like canceling what it said it's going to do in a way. I think a lot of shows, there's a lot of like, we set up the plan, we execute the plan, maybe something goes wrong in the plan, but like we as an audience are always like getting exactly kind of what we expect. With this show, like, there's been episodes dedicated to these guys just trying to connect this guy to the suicides, and they can't. Like, I did not see that coming. I did not expect them to just not find a way. They're like, they covered their tracks really well, guys. I guess we're just going to have to kidnap him.
I personally feel like I felt there was really no other way to do things because of the way that the show is going, which is this show clearly wants to lay everything out on the table and have these kind of debates. And that's kind of the thing I love most about politically heavy driven shows like this. So my perception, knowing this is a novel, probably, I mean, there's a lot of just debate, a lot of theories are thrown around and smacked into each other when the debate happens in the episode. I very much felt like this was a translation from a novel in a good way. I fucking loved it. But I felt that there was really no other way other than they had to let the debate happen based on what I perceived the author's intent to be. And in order to get there, there was no, like I said before, there can't be any bullshit shenanigans that, he slipped through our fingers, whoopsie doopsie, and now he's debating. There had to be some real shit. So, fair.
Yeah, I mean, I expected the debate to happen. I just thought maybe they'd capture him after the debate. I really thought the debate was more going to be like a big endpoint to the arc where it was going to wrap, there was going to be this heavy debate.
Sense.
Our guy was going to ultimately lose the debate because the arguments against suicide just seemed like they should be easy to make, and then they were going to capture him, and we were going to move on from there. It was going to turn out that there was more to it, more to his intentions than just merely to make suicide legal or whatever, which is true, but the debate goes in some unexpected directions. I'm curious to know how you feel about it, because as an actual debate on suicide, it's not particularly deep or long. I thought we were going to get like an entire episode of just debating about this. It's the second half of an episode, really, and it basically amounts to each of the four people against Itsuki lays out their argument for why suicide bad. He deflects all those arguments, and then things sort of go in an interesting direction. But let's talk about the arguments themselves.
Sure.
How do you feel about the arguments these guys proposed for or against suicide? I mean, I guess I want to ask you, did you feel like your own stance on suicide's legality was swayed at all by the arguments presented here?
That's a great question. I do want to talk about it. I want to talk about it in the context of so we'll discuss it right now, but I want to kind of revisit that question in the context of everything that happens at the end of this and the subsequent episode, because I was wondering if implications were being drawn. There were ramifications as to that, the actions of next episode, but on the debate itself, I felt that So first of all, you've got the one guy, whatever his fucking name is, Itsuki debating the for position for the law, and four political boys debating the against position. And so right down the line, those four guys each break down the argument into one of the basic components. And I kind of felt like the first guy who speaks, he says, I feel that when it comes to this debate, I'm being asked my opinion, the most important thing about this debate is the socio-economic impact of legalizing suicide and how it will affect GDP and how that'll affect, income streams and overall, health of the economy and whatnot. Now, no one would ever say, when it comes to debating suicide, it seems bizarre for someone to start with the economic argument. It's just
I
there's
thought
so
it
many
was
better
weird
ones
as well.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, so that it seems kind of silly for that guy on like a political front, but like it's so clear what the author of the novel in the anime is doing. They've broken it down into the 4 key arguments here, and they just go through them leading up to what they feel is the one that I would start with if I was politically debating this, the emotional appeal. So first of all, there's the economic one, then the moral argument, then there's like a status quo / shock argument, and finally the emotional argument as to why people just can't handle it. I found those arguments reasonable. So, but just to summarize my thoughts on them, we don't really need to go into all of them, I don't think. But
no,
I felt like they were doing a good job of ironing out and pinning down just the basically the simplest possible versions of these 4 components of the argument. So I felt that it did its job perfectly well, and I felt kind of like you might say that like it felt thin or we would have wanted more discussion, but this is like a televised debate going on. In the diegenesis of the show.
To some extent, I felt like it was realistic that
like a realistic like
debate,
Fox News debate or something like that.
Each of these politicians is going to just kind of give the shortest, easiest to understand version of their answer, and none of them are experts. None of them are like philosophers. None of them are scientists.
They're speaking to just the general Japanese public, so they're going to try to appeal to that audience.
Like to some extent, when I think about like if this show is really about having like if we really wanted to have this actual debate IRL, there would be way more that could be brought to the table. Like so many different angles it could be viewed from, so much more to the conversation where like when Itsuki, for instance, with the economic thing, the guy basically his point comes down to like every time somebody kills themselves, it's a blow to the economy. And like fair, but there's a lot that could be discussed about how that could be changed, how that doesn't have to be true.
His rebuttal to that, well, I don't want to cut you off if you want to keep going on that, but
ultimately what he says is like, well, my theory is that less people will kill themselves under this new law, so it will actually have a better economic impact, and that is something that could have been unpacked in an endless amount of conversation. And even when he refutes each of these 4 guys, they kind of are like, well, hold on, like, no, like, what are you talking about? But the situation escalates.
Exactly what you're saying. I kind of feel like anime rules applied here, and that we all know in a real debate, your opponent just won't be shocked and concede the point instantly, but because of anime rules, that's kind of what happened. They're like, whoa, we never even considered you could argue against, like, the economic impact of legalizing. So, well, you're blowing my mind in this debate. It was kind of a sophomore interpretation.
I don't think that it was so much that they backed down or thought they were wrong, as that they just didn't know what to say.
But I see,
they were like, wait, what? Like,
that
I gotta rethink my arguments.
That in of itself was foolish, because I felt that his rebuttals were exactly what any kind of even reasonably experienced debater would bring to the, like, you would think, like, okay, when I say I think the economy will be impacted, what is my opponent going to say on this subject? And maybe the idea here is to your point that like this idea of legalizing suicide is so radical that like it hasn't, like, philosophers have discussed this idea throughout time, but have our politicians like familiarize themselves with the ramifications of this? Maybe not. But so just to sum up the whole debate, and we can talk more about Itsuki's points perhaps, but like it felt just a little bit juvenile, but I frankly I didn't hate that. The most thing that I found the most silly about it was just how easily it was to kind of like blow over the anti position of the 4 guys, and they almost had no rebuttals. One guy tried to argue a little bit on like the shock, like one guy's attack was just like he didn't even make like a real argument. He just said, bro, the Japanese people know that you are responsible for those 64 suicides. He's just trying to do like a shock thing to call him out. And like again, in anime logic, I felt like Itsuki was able to really easily like wiggle out of that, where in real life people are way more entrenched in thinking someone's a good guy or a bad guy. But nonetheless, the effort was appreciated.
I mean, the whole mindset of this show, like you really have to buy into Shiniki as this conceptual city where the people are kind of like implicitly have agreed to let this crazy shit happen.
Yes.
Because IRL scandal is a much bigger deal than like actual talking points. Like we don't live in a world where people sit around and have the most well-reasoned debate about why we should have the laws we have.
That's why this is a very optimistic view. Like, could this ever happen with real people? Probably not ever. Maybe one day if we evolve as like a society. But if we can suspend our disbelief to that degree and just be like, these people are open books. They'll accept any philosophy if people are willing to debate it. We'll kind of leave human nature and human superstition and biases in the back door. That makes it more easy to swallow.
Even though the ultimately the argument from the career politician that kind of
let's get to that.
Almost wins out is that people are emotional and they're not going to think about this logically, and they can't, because death is something that people just cannot think about logically. And it's interesting because Itsuki does bring some examples to the table, which is a good side of the debate writing in this show.
Yeah.
That, like, when he talks about why suicide being legal could reduce suicides, he talks about how in certain places where weed is legal, fewer people do weed,
like in the Netherlands and
than in other places.
Mm-hmm.
And he brings up that when they raised the moral argument of just like, we all know death is wrong, he's like, well, we all thought homosexuality was wrong, and now it's legal in a lot of places.
Yep.
We there have been. And something I was really surprised didn't come up in all of this is how suicide is a huge part of Japanese history. Like, he brings up that in Rome, there was like a system where you could allow somebody to kill themselves or whatever. Like, what about Bushido? What about samurais cutting their fucking guts open? What about kamikaze? Like, what about the whole history of like accepted suicide in Japan? Surprised none of that came up.
Maybe it's considered
Maybe they thought it would be too obvious.
I was gonna say maybe it's considered quaint to bring up their samurai history, and they're like, no, we're metropolitan, we're international politicians now. We think on a larger scale than just our dusty old traditions.
But
that would have been a good
Rome
example.
is a worthwhile call to, not ancient Japan. I guess it's more civilized.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in their mind, original parliaments and whatnot, and that always. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last content episode, but I think he's basically alluding to something that you see in like The Godfather 2, when the people are allowed to like kill themselves in order for their families to escape. Like if you betray the family, if you fail something, and your whole family would be wiped out. Instead, you can kill yourself. Then they take care of your family, like in their little organized crime unit, or in the ancient Roman legions, or whatever the fuck it was. So I mean, his argument that there's a utility for it, in some cases. But I mean, to your original point, well, we will get to that emotional thing, because I want to discuss that at great length, obviously. But so far, I felt like I do feel that the show is making a good attempt to debate some of the first level arguments that people are going to raise when it comes to the idea of legalizing suicide. So, like, do I feel that like my personal values or like my personal thoughts were represented here? Because personally, I mean, I lean in. I was waiting for the whole like freedom shtick. Like, people have the right to choose. Who are we to impose our will on other people who decide to commit suicide? And Itsuki did bring that up a couple of small times. I thought that was going to be like his prime example or something. Maybe just because that's my bias. Like, I was happy to see that. I would have leaned into that more if it was me debating this point. But I mean, me personally, I kind of would come down on this issue really with the freedom thing being the main thing. I am suspicious, perhaps. I would like to kind of do a test and see what happens if you legalize suicide. I guess I kind of want to. I'll be a little bit of a coward about it.
And that brings me to the other big problem I have with this debate, which is that it was already mentioned in this show that like euthanasia is legal in places. You can legally kill yourself, just under like a very regulated, specific set of circumstances.
Yeah.
Why did nobody mention that? Why was nobody just like, okay, well, we could keep your suicide as legal thing, but can't we like make it humane? Like, isn't the main problem here that people are jumping off of buildings in the middle of the streets? Like, I mean, are we meant to assume that they will be implementing something like that? Like, is nobody going to mention, like, how much worse for society it is? Well, not frankly, just that these people killed themselves, but did it in a way that obstructs all of society.
Honestly, the fact that those 64 people jumped off that building, sure, it was like a spectacle, it got attention, but it definitely was a public nuisance, like, for sure. That to me seems like terrible PR for your movement.
Oh yeah.
What if those 64 people went to the top of those roofs and then quietly injected themselves with cyanide and just peacefully laid down and died, like on the rooftop?
And that's the problem here is that, like, this show is, it's first and foremost an edgy thriller, and so, like, having everybody jump off the roof is a cool way to end an episode, but, like, it immediately raised this question that has never been addressed at this point of, like,
who cleaned that up? Who cleaned that up?
Is this the kind of suicide that he's really campaigning for? Is nobody going to point out that there's a huge difference between publicly killing yourself and, like, having a doctor, like, properly
Gigi,
end you?
That's a great question, and frankly, I think it might be tying it. I'm a little bit suspicious of this author right now because I have a worst case scenario in my mind for what's going on here, and it's that Itsuki, on the one hand over here, is doing all these things to make, like, the intellectual case for legalizing suicide, and again, we'll get to the emotional stuff in just a sec. And so he's kind of the face of it, and he's saying, like, oh, no, I didn't coerce anyone, all these people decided to do it, there's all these positives that we could do it, making the world a better place, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, over here, you got Magase Ai, and she's the one who seemingly is getting people to kill themselves in these, like, horrific ways, like they wouldn't have done it if not interfered with by her. And so, personally, I'm a little suspicious that rather than this author, like, trying to really examine basically in a sci-fi sense, or I don't know what you call it when it's not in the future, but like a sci-fi kind of concept of, like, political fiction, I don't know, like, what if we legalize this thing and what would happen to society? I'm afraid that he's making the conclusion that he knows for sure that it's going to be bad, so he's dressing it up with this Itsuki argument, and then it's almost like a hardcore, like, conservative position or something. He's dressing it up in, like, its fancy clothes, and then he's really gonna deliver, like, no, it was obviously bad from the start. There was never a debate to be had on this subject, and I knew that because I'm human and my Bible says so. Just, to be stereotypical. I would be very disappointed if that turned out to be what we're kind of building to with this. Yeah. And we will get to reasons why I suspect that may be the case. That's what I think so far.
Well, so the argument that ends up kind of winning out but spiraling out of control all at once is that at the end of this debate, our career politician brings out the kid with the mask who had made the YouTube video.
Yep.
Begging for people to, like, help convince his dad not to kill himself.
And by the way, Gigi, but just before you say, I just want to say that what I appreciate about this is that, so we just argued all these debate points. We briefly touched on all of them. This debate happens. What I actually like is that this politician guy, he just smiles at the camera. He's like, I'm not even worried about it. And you know why? It's because he knew people don't give a fuck about debates. They give a fuck about these emotional appeals. And he's like, I've got it locked up. I'm a politician to my fucking core. I appreciate the black pill that is to the audience. I think that's mature of them to
essentially what he's trying to say is, like, ultimately people are going to favor the emotional argument, so I'm going to make the most emotional argument. Here is a literal child whose dad wants to kill himself and he doesn't want him to do it. Your law is the only thing encouraging this kid's dad to do it. So tell me, people, do you want this child's dad to die?
Right.
That's his platform, and he's got this kid because of the fact that there's these weird laws here that anybody can run for parliament, he straight up is like, I'm going to give up my slot to this kid. He's going to be your new PM or whatever so that he can fight this law, and I'm going to back him.
Literally vote for the Greta Thunberg of non-suicide. Yes. Here he is. Don't vote for me, some fat old, piece of shit. Vote for this beautiful child. It's a perfect plan.
But then in the start of the next episode, what we find out is that this child is Itsuki's son.
Oh my god! How could this have happened? What a blunder! Who's getting fired for this? What a shock! What do you?
And then it turns out that Itsuki's son, the father who was going to kill himself, was Itsuki, and the reason Itsuki wants to kill himself is because he wants. Well, it was originally because he wanted to give his heart to his son, because his son has a bad heart, and I guess you are not, because suicide is a crime, then you, I guess, cannot donate your organs if you kill yourself?
I'm going to guess there's just a law
I
to
didn't
prevent.
know this.
I'm just going to assume that's true, because I could see that law existing. Like, you're not allowed to die in the
So
donation.
immediately, okay, first question that needs to come up, and I know this is basically addressed by what Itsuki says afterwards, maybe even as a justification, but like, essentially, this immediately raises the emotional argument. Obviously, you should be able to give your organs to somebody else. And his argument is like, would suicide not be justified if, like, I could make my child live by giving him my heart? Like, if I decide to prioritize his life over mine, shouldn't I be able to make that decision? Which, again, is not the same thing as arguing that suicide should be legal. He could have argued for just that being allowed, to transfer organs.
One facet. He's trying to bundle all of suicide under. Like, this is one of his tactics, to smuggle it all in with this very rosy face.
But this is a solid emotional argument for why at least that should be legal. But from that, he kind of extrapolated that he was like, the problem ultimately isn't just that I can't donate my organs to you. It's that we have such a weird relationship with death as human beings. That, our fear of death, the fact that we let it have such a huge impact on us when somebody dies or if we die ourselves. Like, if we could have a happier relationship with death as a choice that people can make that can make the world better, either for themselves or other people, then shouldn't we be allowed to do that? Let's try to improve our relationship with death. That's why I'm going so far out with this fucking crazy law, is to try to give people a better relationship with death. So he ultimately makes a pretty solid emotional argument, at least for the whole organ transplant thing. Like, I would think that would immediately become a question on everybody's mind. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that does sound like a reasonable reason that, like, you could commit suicide if it was under these circumstances. Maybe if you're giving your body up to science and all your organs are going to be used by other people, that might be a noble way to die if you really don't want to be around anymore. So it's worth thinking about.
And I mean, and he is elaborating that, like, this is my example, but he's making a larger point that we have such a toxic relationship with death, and largely in the West, it does seem to have stemmed from, like, our Judeo-Christian origin. And this is when I was getting particularly invested in his argument, because I see a lot of overlap with the things that I believe with what he was saying at this particular point. And I mean, just one example is the fact that this was like we talked about last time in Midsommar and in fucking that Star Trek episode, old people choose to kill themselves in these specific societies, and like it's because they don't want to be a burden to future generations. We don't have infinite resources right now, blah blah blah. And like, it's a fact that I believe something like 95% of all, I don't know if I want to say expenses, or of medical expenses are expended in the last, like, less than 1% of the average human being lifespan. So I'm just theoretically, this is just a pure economic case. Imagine if every human being, like, decided to end their life, if we could somehow do this 1% earlier than their expiration date, if we knew that or whatever. Like, think of the money that would be saved by their family that could go towards positive things. So, like, I'm not encouraging anyone to kill themselves, obviously. What I'm saying is that, like, with Itsuki's larger point, I think there is a rather toxic relationship between a lot of the Western cultures and death. I think that we grieve it too much. I think that we do a terrible job of processing when people in our lives die. And frankly, it's true. I've had very few people in my life die. My grandpa dying is like the main one that made any real emotional impact on me. All my other grandparents were already dead before I was born or anything. Nobody else I know has really died. So, I mean, but again, I would argue that there's like a logical feeling to this, and then there's an emotional appeal. Maybe other people... whatever. You don't understand what I'm saying, but like Itsuki's making some sense here, is my point.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't bring up the fact that there are also cultures that have better relationships with death, or different ones. Like
Japan is one of them, as far as I know.
Japan, Egypt, like worshipped death as a natural consequence of life. I mean, like, we have to face the fact we will all die. Like, that is definitely going to happen to each of us, provided that immortality is not created in our lifetimes.
We're not being the cucks to the gray dragon of CGP Gray's design or whatever. It's just that right now we don't have that. Let's work as hard as we can to get there, but right now people will die. So, let's find a way to deal with it.
So, like, if people are dying left and right, then, like, we should be, we need better emotional preparation for it, better understanding of the fact that it's going to happen, and just, I think that the core of what Itsuki wants is good. It's just his methodology, this gigantic shock value, insane method of we're just gonna legalize suicide and make a bunch of people kill themselves. Not the best way to go about it.
No, it's not.
But you know, it is a high impact and dramatic and gets conversations going amongst normal people, which I think is what you know. When it comes to politics, like again, we could have philosophers debate this stuff all day, but it's not going to change anything about like what is actually legal and what people actually think.
Yeah.
You really need, you know, a highly publicized, highly, you know, thought-provoking event to get the average person to think about stuff, and he accomplished that. So maybe his goals, you know, were met. It wasn't. It's still gonna be, you know, unclean going forward, especially because we as viewers know that he did in fact coerce all these people into suicide.
No, I don't
they
think that's
were
true.
not suicidal.
I remain of the position that I don't think we know for sure yet that Itsuki specifically like is in on like even if Magase Ai convinced these people, which it does seem like it's the case, she convinced them. I think that he might be under the persuasion that like it was a good faith like discussion had with them, or like these people already wanted to, and I just like introduced. I don't know yet, but I want to believe that. It's
not impossible, but I mean, this guy works. He seems to work really closely with Magase Ai.
Yes, he does.
She's even playing his wife in this whole fiasco. And in episode 7, does she
we'll get to that.
Make an entrance if she hadn't already? But yeah, the question really is like, what does Itsuki know what she did to those people? Was he using it to promote his platform or not? I'm just either way, it doesn't necessarily hurt his points. You know?
No, it does. Well, if I find out that he knew everything she's doing all along, and that he's kind of like just putting a good face on something with more malicious intent, I'm just saying that will make me very disappointed, because I like the idea of someone making a good faith argument. Like, let's debate anything, man. You can debate anything, including shocking shit like this. I think that's fascinating. So we'll see. We'll see.
I don't think it would. For me, it wouldn't ruin the idea that like even if he was, you know, manipulating this situation so that people would kill themselves, I don't think it makes his argument any different. It's just the methodology by which he got the conversation started was.
You're not wrong.
You know,
you're not wrong about that. It doesn't change the arguments at all. But like it's from a meta perspective, or just from a larger context of the story perspective. If we later find out that like that this guy had deliberately malicious intent and wasn't really that interested in, you know, all these good things that he says he is, like, how does that make us as the viewers feel about those arguments he was making? It makes us feel like, oh, it was all bullshit all along. Like, oh, he didn't, you know, it was all totally dog shit. I'm not saying it's like outright confirming that, but that's what the feeling that will be communicated to the viewer. And I just find that that's kind of what I'm talking about this. Like, I'll be disappointed if this turns out to be a underhanded slight of like more radical ideas than, you know, a real good faith examination of them. And it won't explicitly say that, but it'll kind of lean that way. And I'd rather avoid that personally, if I was writing
So moving on from there, the rest of episode 7 is basically a horror scene, a downward spiral. So our main guy, he's got all his cops. There's like 30 of them, and they're putting on this huge op to kidnap Itsuki from this building as he's being led through the halls. They've got people all over the place, and as they're doing the op, eventually he, you know, our boy starts to realize that he can't get into contact with a bunch of his teams, and oh shit, what's really going on? And he's sent people in different directions. His good buddy comes, who's been around in the show as like our one kind of safe haven character. He's like the best friend guy. He's usually not that connected to the main events of the plot. So if there's any character who I had kind of registered as safe in my mind, it was this guy.
That's why they did it, Digi. That's why he was here the whole time.
Really good, great dramatic twist, because I was not prepared. And like he comes over, he's bleeding from his leg. Turns out he shot his own leg like Shy Ronnie, and he fucking is bleeding out. And our guy's like, "What happened? You got to tell me." And he's like, "Look, this bitch, you got to get as far away from her as possible. All she has to do is whisper in your ear, and you will want to kill yourself."
Let's be clear. She's here. Magase Ai is here posing as his wife, or maybe is his wife. Who knows? But she's fucking here, and she's whispering in everyone's ear, Oh my god.
She's
oh my
killing
god.
everybody.
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing to me in this whole second half of the episode was exactly how the mind control basically works, like what she does. It's not that we learned like literally how she makes this happen, but when she whispers in your ear, basically as he describes it, it becomes like sex, where you have to die to come. And so
that's right.
You're struggling, and it basically just feels like you are constantly edging, like just this insane amount of edging to try to, get the suicide off your back, but like you can't help it. You have to come. It's so obvious that it's gonna feel the best once you kill yourself. That's how she fucks with you.
It's an interesting mechanic. It kind of makes sense based on that logic why everyone's so happy to die, because you get to release and it feels great.
Literally like calming day and night.
I'm just calming all the time. Okay, now on this subject, and maybe I'll go back real quick and raise something else while we're on the subject. This was one of my two kind of issues here. So we've just confirmed this is a supernatural power. This is nothing any human being could ever do.
Yes.
It is not realistic at all. She simply has a magical power to make men, maybe women too, but definitely men.
Assumably, the
guy even says like you're a man
there's
too.
Some kind of
Maybe
there's a science behind it in the sense that like there's some kind of, I don't know, maybe when she talks to you, she puts radio waves through your brain or something. Like, I don't know, is she a mutant? Is she an alien? Is she an otherworldly force? She calls herself a human in this episode. She like insists on this idea that she is human, just like our main character. So I don't know how to take that. We'll learn eventually, I assume.
I think I said last episode of Content here when we were talking about the show, I was very much looking forward to like finding out how she convinced these people to commit suicide. I thought that would be interesting. I thought it would be kind of like a discussion, like kind of an argumentation was made, like with Itsuki to everybody. But no, it's just a magical power, basically, that she makes you want to come, and in order to come, you have to kill yourself.
I mean, I essentially thought that would be the case. I didn't think, because, what, did she, like, literally convince all these people to kill themselves?
There were hints that was not reasonable, that she'd be able to convince all those people or anything, but she just has to walk by, whisper in your ear, and then you're affected by this virus or whatever. Yeah. So I'll just say about this, I am disappointed that it doesn't, there's not a lot of my beloved intellectual content in that particular phenomenon. But now that we've established it, okay, I know there's not a lot to dig into there. I will look elsewhere for the debate points and the interesting things. And while I'm on the subject of like small issues, let me just say that, okay, I have one issue that is maybe bigger, I don't know, but it's that, so the son, right? When we bring out the son, or the boy who made that video, who turns out to be the son of the mayor, okay, he's brought out by our, like, political man as, like, our star witness, star of the show. That guy obviously procured this kid, but he didn't fucking know that it was Itsuki. Like, who fucked up? Who fucked up so bad that, one, he didn't know that the guy was his son.
He's never met Itsuki's son.
And two,
maybe just because of the mask. Is it just the mask that prevented it?
It's Superman logic. Puts on glasses, you can't tell anything about this individual. And the other thing is that he didn't know about this whole, like, wouldn't you think, like, the fact that this guy's, like, this kid is dying of, like, a heart issue, the father has probably made attempts to, like, have inquiries about, can I donate my heart? No, I can't because of suicide. Oh, maybe I could do something to change that. That would be relevant to the debate we're having right now. Yeah. It's just, I mean, I'm like, okay, you really should have known that. You're being a very bad politician to not look up anything. Like, his whole staff who procured, like, literally, did they pick up this kid from Itsuki's literal house where he lives and be like, everything seems fine here. Just picking up a child from the opposition's house. I don't see a connection here. You see what I'm saying? It's a little silly.
It's ridiculous.
But hey, we ain't all angels.
I guess at the end of the day, we just have to assume that Magase Ai made all that happen. She was standing in as the wife.
Oh no, we can't do that. We can't do that. Now we're just saying magic explains everything.
Well, I'm not saying magic. I'm saying she probably just lied to everybody, right? Like, she probably is the go-between. Like, assuming, how did they get this kid? They would have had to talk to his parents, so they had to talk to her. And if she's pretending to be Itsuki's wife, I mean, maybe this kid's not even actually his son, and maybe this whole thing is fucking a farce. Like,
that's possible. You know, that's true. I was just thinking how silly it was that, like, neither side knew or expected this boy would come out, even though they should probably know what the others are up to. Okay, all right, I don't know. But now you know how I feel, audience. Do with it what you will.
It's hard to know, like, what is the reality of the situation, because obviously there's still plenty of episodes to go, and we are cut off until the next one, until December. So all we have to go on is what we've got. And right now it does seem like the story has done a lot of really kind of goofy and ridiculous shit for the sake of shocking plot twists.
Yes.
They are entertaining. Yes. There is interesting intellectual content. There's interesting logic behind things, but it's like you can't think about it too hard or else it raises way too many questions. And maybe there are answers to those questions, but they have not decided to tell us those answers. So for now, we could just as easily believe everyone is really dumb.
I guess so. But that goes against, like, the politician's supposed to be really smart. He's supposed to plan these things out. So, you know, it's a little unfortunate.
But
those are all my big complaints. So, like, I'm past all my big complaints. So there you go. The rest is.
I have one
positive.
big complaint, and that's so the second half of episode 7 is this madness downward spiral of fucking Magase Ai murders everybody basically except for our main character. His fucking team is gone, and all of our secondary characters, basically, because our cute girl who joined the team, who I at first thought was Magase Ai, is in
deconfirmed.
Yeah, she's chopped to fucking pieces. This scene, okay, this was one of the most intense, like, scenes of a person getting killed I've seen in anime in a while. Like, I definitely did not expect this political thriller to have, like, some of the most insane, you know, gruesome murder scenes.
Me neither.
I mean, we got to see the best friend guy kind of shoot himself in the fucking head, and then the girl gets each of her limbs chopped off and then her head. And we know that she is awake. She's screaming. Our main guy is being forced to watch. He can't respond. And it's a great scene, though. The thing is that Magase Ai's dialogue means nothing.
Let's discuss that, because I have many things to say about what she is talking about in that scene. But
so this is my biggest general issue.
So just to be clear for those who, I mean, you probably saw the show, but everyone was killed except Sekiro, who was kidnapped by Itsuki, got away with Magase Ai. So clearly we know they're working together, whatever. They're in some undisclosed location, the two girls, and, you know, she fucking calls up our boy Zen, and then the video plays, and we see her. Yes,
she shows him a live stream of her cutting up his number 2 girl, basically. Set hilariously intercut with his wife and son making lunch.
And artistically done. Very off-putting, very disturbing, but and
hilarious.
And by the way, Digi, now that we've seen this, what are your fucking? I mean, okay, every other character's dead. It was in these 2 episodes we finally see the wife and son. Obviously, the wife and son are next on the fucking chopping block. I will not stand for this shit. Do not. I'm already over the fucking top that you would do this to this girl. This was okay. This really fucked me up, like, Digi. This really fucked me up.
They're trying to suggest that they are definitely going to murder everyone connected to this guy in any way. I mean, I would assume at this point he would put his wife and kid into hiding if he doesn't want them dead.
If he's not a fucking retard, he will do that immediately. But
and of course, we also have the big question of, like, why is Magase Ai keeping him alive? Because assumably she could have killed him by now.
They met face to face. We know with a whisper she can get someone to kill themselves. So, well, you know.
So there's some reason she's keeping him alive, and she gives, of course, while she's doing the murder, which is, you know, tense and great, but she's giving this speech about I don't know. Like, this is a thing that happens in anime a lot, where characters, they start talking about these broad kind of emotional concepts, or, like, their own personal philosophy, which doesn't really mean anything. Like, she's just saying a bunch of empty stuff that amounts to nothing. It doesn't really tell us anything about her or the main character. She's just yammering on about heroes and what it means to be evil versus what it means to be a hero, but she's not explaining any of that. She's just I'm the villain and you're the hero, and that's what gives us meaning to all this shit.
Let's quickly discuss real quick so this might even tie into why she left him alive and why, you know, everyone else is dead. dead or whatever. So our boy's name is Seizaki Zen. It translates to like power, good, justice man, whatever. Her name, some helpful commenters on the last episode translated for us, looking at the kanji for Magase Ai. The kanji means twisted love. Or like twist country or world love. So like a twisted world's love or twisted love or whatever. So, I mean, clearly.
I mean, it's obvious. It's very obvious.
Bad girl, good man. We've got it down, understood, makes sense.
She thinks that she's doing something heroic on some level. So like and that was this whole exact same speech was already given at the end of episode 5. She calls him up and she's like, I see myself as this hero trying to save the world. And so basically what she's saying comes down to, you don't understand why, but everything I'm doing is justified in my mind. And yes, I am a force of evil, but it takes evil to do good sometimes, I guess, something like that. But like, we don't have any context into what she's talking about. So like, until we know what she means, all of this is gobbledygook. It's just like continuing to make her seem mysterious, continuing to leave her intentions obscure as we continue to chase her. And it's just like, I just want to know, what is her actual fucking plan? Like, why is she doing this stuff?
To a large degree, you're absolutely right. I'm trying to give her a little bit of credit. I mean, okay, so in the scene, she's torturing and murdering Sekiro, who has done nothing wrong, and she's, video phoning it to Zen to let him see the whole thing that's going on, and she's giving this whole speech about good and evil or whatever. Okay, I mean, let's just step back for a moment. In most anime, if this were like a Fate movie or like a Fate show, I'd be like, this is utterly retarded. But this show is really about examining morality. At least to a degree. And so I think that her speech here is generic anime villain speech, but I think it's a little more in keeping with the themes of the show than your average anime. So she asks, like, why is life good? What is good? What is evil? Why is life good? Why is death bad? Like, I want you. Like, I'm going to torture this girl. I'm going to murder her so you'll take me seriously and really think about this. Why is this bad? Like, why is life good? I want you to think about this. And he's obviously having a complete breakdown. He's like, okay, fine. I'll think about it. I'll do what you say. Yeah. She can't hear him. So, I mean, those questions, look, okay. The thing is, I don't think those questions are nonsensical. What they are is utterly sophomoric, basic-ass philosophical questions. And I had answers to those questions. Look, okay, I've matured, right? I've matured throughout my life. When I was younger, I had some religious ideas about this. As I've gotten older and I'm a complete black-pilled atheist, I now have a totally set basis for my morality. It's based completely on like the human experience and consciousness, and there's like a couple general axioms. Even if you don't believe in like anything, the one thing that we know exists that cannot be an illusion is human consciousness, at the very least your own. And you don't know that you're in a simulation where no one else is real. So it's a safe bet to assume that other human beings also have consciousness and feel things similarly to you. That's a foundational, basic, good assumption to make about life. I don't know if I'm the only person who exists in the whole fucking universe, but I'm going to assume not, because if I'm wrong about that and I just start gunning people down in the streets, that's a big oopsie, and I shouldn't do that. That's a big risk to take for very little potential reward. Okay, so all you have to do to answer her very basic ass questions is just like, okay, like what makes consciousness good versus bad? What is a good life versus a bad life? Okay, can we at least agree that a life in which you experience the maximum possible suffering and pain, all right, is that life worse than a life where you experience, just for example, the most possible joy and pleasure possible? Can we all agree on that? If we can agree on that,
with no extenuating circumstances, it can't be that you're suffering for a greater good.
No, it's just like everything else is removed, just on those two factors. If we accept that is true, the most possible, this is a Sam Harris argument, by the way, that the most possible suffering is a worse life than the most possible joy and pleasure, just devoid of all morale, just pleasure versus pain. We now have a basis for all human civilization, how we should treat each other, which basically boils down to like the golden rule, which is like what it all comes down to. Just don't treat other people badly, or treat others the way you want to be treated. That's the golden rule.
Exactly.
And just like I've just answered her retarded anime villain question. It's not complicated. And maybe this show I respect, right? I respect this show, so I'm prepared to just take these arguments for what they are and say, this just means the fact that she has no answer for this means either she's incredibly naive. She's just like the stupidest, like she's a literal like child brain who hasn't thought about these questions, or she's just completely insane and like it doesn't really matter what she's doing. It's one of those two things, because these questions are so elementary and basic. And you know, I hated watching this scene. It feels good to get angry at fictional characters who are doing bad things. I don't want to go on a whole thing ranting about how evil she is and like how sick it made me to see somebody tortured and killed like this. Yeah, that's almost weird virtue saying. Like, who cares? We all know pain is bad, suffering's bad, death is bad, right. Life is generally good. But to be subjected to her pathetic attempts at rationalizing what she's doing, like, oh, I just don't get it. Like, man, this is Babylon, right? This is say whatever the fucking name of the city is. We can push the envelope with like new morality. Look, we all came to a consensus like thousands of years ago about how human beings should interact. I'm not saying don't examine them, but examine them and then just don't be utterly retarded. Like I said about, you might be the only person who exists, but we shouldn't just assume that no one else exists so we can start murdering everybody in the streets GTA style. That's just a bad assumption, a bad logical fallacy to make. So, I mean, my guess at this point, I literally just has a broken brain. She's just programmed to do evil because that makes the most sense for her character, which frankly is utterly boring on like the hierarchy of like villains. Of like the top ones like the anti-spirals or Vite, like it makes sense. Their plot actually makes more sense than the hero sometimes. Then you got like characters who are just obeying their nature, characters who just want to watch the world burn or whatever. She's pretty low. She's just like, I think she's just obeying her nature. And that's fine.
I mean, there's so little to know about her. Again, that's what bothers me so much is like, we keep getting these, she's not actually presenting him a moral thing to think about. She's just telling him to think about morality.
And
like,
I have done this so many times. Yeah. I have answers that I feel very comfortable with.
He has. Like, I don't think this character is somebody who hasn't thought about morality.
I actually think that's kind of what they're building to. Okay, at this point, I think this is like young adult fiction. And I think that our character Zen, Seizaki, I think he's supposed to be a stand-in for like the young adults reading this, like the original novel or this anime watching it, who really have not examined this on a deep level yet. That's what I think.
But he's like, the way that the characters are presented, though, like he's presented as like a guy who's like in his 30s, who seems to have a good, strong head on his shoulders and understand like higher concepts. Like he's not somebody who's been stumped by any of the philosophical discussion in the show so far. Like he has had some things he's had to think about that were deeper than what she's telling him.
One of the refrains of his character has been like up to it wasn't really in these two episodes, but like up to this point has been like, what is justice? What is justice? And I mean...
Well, sure, but, I mean, I don't see how her chopping off his friend's limbs and telling her, think real hard about this, is going to change any of his thoughts about what is justice. Like, she hasn't... Like, okay, it was hugely different when, like, Itsuki says, oh, I'm going to give... Like, the reason I want to kill myself is to give my heart to my son. Of course. That is something that recontextualizes the argument, and you think about it differently. She's just like, think about stuff, chop,
By the way...
This is just reinforcing my opinions about evil.
Do you like the fact... I mean, do you like... obviously, this is intentional, but, like, in the debate, he's like, look, we all agree murder is bad, but I'm arguing about this other stuff. Meanwhile, like, his best friend, Magase Ai, is fucking murdering someone who didn't do anything. Yeah. I mean, okay, obviously that's intentional. Okay, now let me... So here's where I go back to my point before, my fears. Okay, my fears here. Now, we now know that Magase Ai is working with Itsuki. We know that they're in cahoots. Does he know everything she's doing? We don't know that for sure. I hope not. But in the reality, where this show is now saying, like, if Itsuki knew what she's doing, like, now she's outright murdered someone, like, for fun, just tortured and killed her. For spectacle or whatever. These damn moids. Oh, I'm so mad at them. Now that we know they're in cahoots, like, is the author now... I'm so scared that what he's doing is he's saying like, oh, you know what I got you guys to do? I got you guys to take arguments about suicide seriously, when really all along we know it's fucking genocidal, like fucked up, like immoral bullshit. Like, check the fucking holy books, my dude. We covered this 1,000 fucking years ago. I'm
really
so
doubt
scared.
That's gonna be the case.
I'm terrified that that's what's gonna happen here. I hope not, because the name of the show, Digi, is Babylon. Everything about the story of Babylon was about humans getting too much hubris, challenging God, and being smacked the fuck down because they were wrong. I'm so scared. That's what the moral of this is gonna be. That's like, lol, don't challenge ideas, bro. Like, obviously these are retarded, and look at the way politicians can, like, weasel you into thinking things. Like, I've watched a bunch of movies lately about, like, the devil. I forget what it is. I watched this Keanu Reeves movie where, like, he's a lawyer and he turns out, spoilers, I forget, it's Sympathy for the Devil, Law of the Devil, I don't know. And it's Keanu Reeves is a lawyer. Al Pacino hires him, because he's a really good lawyer, to work at his legal firm or whatever. Spoiler alert, Al Pacino is the devil. Al Pacino is the devil in the movie, and Keanu Reeves is his son. And, like, throughout the movie, Keanu Reeves debates a bunch of, like he uses the law. He uses the law to get off murderers, to get off, like, I don't know, like, arms traffickers, like, weird religious cults, or, like, sacrificing animals. Like, he uses legal loopholes to get people off. And, like, the message at the end is that, like, oh my God, like, the devil can interfere. This isn't even a religious thing, but it's just that, like bad intentions can be conveyed in the law. Like, oh my God, the law can be used in all these ways to do horrible things that, like, if you just trust your gut, bro, you know is wrong. You know it's fucking wrong to do these things. But it's more complicated than that. Life is complicated, you guys. Things cannot be boiled down to simple questions. Freedom versus, like, care for people versus, I don't know, like, well-being versus human autonomy. All these things are in a dance with each other and moral questions all the time. You can't just say, like, just go with your gut, bro, or that new thing is always bad, or that old thing is always good, or vice versa, or whatever the fuck. And I just pray we're nowhere near making an argument like that with this show. But if this turns out, like, if it turned out that was the point, and that this author was, like, a hardcore Christian, all I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. That's all.
Here's another question. Did you have the experience of, during that scene, just constantly thinking, like, please tell me that he's going to turn on, like, screen record, or take a screen cap, or take the laptop to somebody and show them that this is happening? Because, like, just moments before, he's, like, being interrogated, and they're like,
they don't
I don't know, man, your story doesn't check out. Magasa, you said yourself the dude killed himself, and he's like, oh my God. But,
you know what I was thinking? I was thinking,
he
like,
has video of her murdering one of the police. So if he shows this to anybody, they will be like, we need to get the road right now.
This was on, like, a tablet or something, but so, like, maybe it doesn't have, like, video record setup. But this is why
on his laptop.
It was okay. It's on his laptop. So, like, I don't know. It was open. It was screen record real fast. But this, I was just thinking, like, this is why I have snipping tool on a fucking fast button at the bottom all the time, so I can just highlight this whole screen and capture it. I got you down. I mean, I got to.
The second the broadcast started, I would have thought the most responsible thing for him to do, as a policeman who's not policeman, but he's at the office. Yeah. There's people around.
All his friends
get
just
the
died.
laptop in front of somebody. Like, immediately, as soon as the stream started, I would have been like, put this in front of somebody so they can see that this is happening.
I think that's a reasonable point. Frankly speaking, maybe this will surprise people for me, but, like, for me, considering everything that this guy is going through right now, like, I'm prepared to accept the argument that, like, he's just, like, so freaked out by what's happening and what's just happened, like, all his friends died, that he just, like, he's like, oh my, it's happening live in front. It's not like it's a recording. It's literally live happening to him. So, like, he's just so freaked out. And if next episode he, like, can't convince anyone that it happened, like, then I'll be like, are you fucking kidding me? He's a fucking prosecutor. You should trust this guy. I suspect that they will take his word for it whenever the next episode drops, and I really hope so. But I guess we'll see, when that happens, because they should.
The show has left us in an interesting place where it's really impossible to predict where it's going to go from here, because, like,
left me in a hole.
Which is, if there was ever a good time to do, I guess, this whole break in the show, this time makes sense, because we can't even, like, speculate on where things are going to go. Yeah. Itsuki already assumably won the debate, essentially. Yeah. Is he going to stay mayor? Is he going to kill himself and give his fucking heart to his son?
That'll be interesting
because he
to see.
Seems to be intending to do it still. Like, I thought he was going to fucking shoot himself on air. Like,
that would have been good.
Felt like it was building to that. But yeah, like, we have truly no idea where everything's gonna go. Most of the fucking side cast is dead.
Yep.
Our main character is in a shit state of mind. He's the only one left who really knows about Magase Ai. She is insanely OP. She can basically kill anybody anytime.
Oh, by the way, on this thing, my suspicion, I think what's going to happen is that, I was going to say this before about their names or whatever, that, like, we've said before that everybody else is dead. We know that Magase Ai is, like, interested in Seizaki. I suspect that her powers don't work on him. This is my suspicion. I bet she tried to do it at the the little meeting they had or whatever when they had her under arrest, and that it didn't work. This is just a guess, and like that's what's made her be like, ooh, now I'm interested in this guy. I want to like fight him on like ideals as opposed to fucking just my magical ability to fuck with men or women or whatever. So I mean, I'll be interested to see if that turns out to be the case. But obviously, there's a link there, and leaving off on this lowest possible point of the story, I just feel fucking gutted. I felt this is why like I don't watch a lot of like horror or I watch horror. I love like things like The Shining. I don't watch gore. I don't watch things of this. I felt like legitimately horrible physically watching this episode. I'm not built for this kind of thing. I just want to think about happy things. This is, maybe it's selfish of me, but I like to ignore bad things and just focus on happy things in my life. And I'm scared for his wife and child. They're on the chopping block. I think that we've killed everybody else so that he'll be able like to save them, though they will be the ones who get saved. Or at least the son, hopefully. I don't know. But Jesus Christ. Like right now, evil has basically won in the form of I. And I just hope... Obviously, most stories end with a happy ending, right? And this, I know the novels continue on for a long time, so Seizaki probably won't die at the end of this. I don't know. That would perhaps be an interesting twist as well if the bad guys just win. Yeah. But like, but what I don't want is a good guy versus bad guy dichotomy at all. I want an idea versus idea dichotomy, which is what Itsuki brings to the table. But I is really just bringing pure evil, which is like way less. We all know murder's bad. Like, question settled. Or let's open up that. Maybe next we legalize murder and see how that one goes with the public. I don't know, but I just want more of that. And right now, I would love to watch more if it was there in front of me. But I guess we'll just have to wait till December to see more of it.
I was just so surprised that the scene went so fucking brutal. And it was entertaining as hell. I mean, I can't say I felt particularly emotional about it because I didn't care about any of these characters at all. Like, I don't know the name of the girl who got cut up.
I barely have any connection to her. I just don't like when human beings get dismembered. It affects me. It does. Even anime.
I used to be that way once. Then I started fapping to it, and then it all went away. But yeah, so I'm still having a good time watching this show. It's very much on a tightrope. It's one of those things where it's like because I already know that this nigga wrote Kato the right answer, and that shit did not hold up at the end.
Right.
But I mean, that was he wrote that anime and he wrote the novels. He did not write this anime. So. For as far as I know, this could be pretty different from the novels. It could be that the author or the writer of this anime is maybe he'll make changes, maybe he'll keep it good. It's been good so far in spite of all the little weird issues. And like there were a bunch of comments on the last video who were like, I can't even believe you like this show after this or this happened, like this cheesy ass shit. It's like, look, I'm willing to accept a lot of dumb shit if a show is entertaining and good, most shows have something dumb about them that you are overlooking, some kind of leap in logic. I'm willing to accept certain amounts of dumb shit as long as it doesn't break the stuff that's good.
Yeah, I think the exercise I went through earlier in this very recording is evidence that like I'm a very logically driven guy. I like when things are perfect, but nothing's perfect. And the question is the rest of it worth ignoring the thing to continue with? Right. Everyone can decide that for themselves.
There are decisions the show could make that could ruin it, that could retroactively make the parts that were good not
that
good.
Is the great danger of like a mystery show like this.
Like this is a show that right now I would put it at like a strong 8. And it could easily end up being like a 2 if it went the
that's
wrong
true.
way.
That's so true.
You know, like if it really ruined everything, it would be like, wow, because it wouldn't be worth watching. It would be a show that you just straight up say, don't bother with that show. It seems like it's going to be interesting, and then it's not.
You know what I hate? I took a bunch of screenshots as I watched, as I usually do. There were some great screenshots of I as she's like committing the murder. She's got she's got the axe. She's got a great pose. And we're gonna use one for the thumbnail. And I fucking hate that I feel like I'm glorifying her by using it. It's obviously the right thing to do, but I feel a moral weight on my soul to fucking show her.
You know, I'll tell you,
Bitch.
Nate, it might interest you to think about this from now on.
Yeah.
My buddy Ghost Lightning had an interesting take on the term guilty pleasure. He was always saying, like, I don't feel guilty about anything that I like. I like it for reasons I can justify.
Yeah.
There's no, I think a lot of critics have made that argument that guilty pleasure is kind of a dumb term, but he was talking about how what he considers a guilty pleasure is when he feels guilty for enjoying something. Like, for instance, his example would be in Code Geass, watching Lelouch cause a bunch of people to die. Because, what Lelouch is doing is evil and twisted, and he is murdering innocent people, but it's in these epic, hype ways, and you're backing him as a character in his narrative, even if he's morally dubious. Like, his intentions may be righteous, but his methodology is not, and so, like, the glee that you feel when he pulls something off is a guilty kind of pleasure.
I kind of feel something similar. It's a little bit different, because for me, I feel like, so these are fictional characters. No one was hurt in real life, but, like, I feel a certain guilt about I'm filled with righteous rage at I for the fucked up things she's done. Obviously the worst thing was torturing and killing Sekiro. Like, I feel guilty that I'm kind of getting a pleasure of this righteous rage at a character's suffering. I did not enjoy watching her suffer and die. I felt very bad. It hurts my soul and me physically. I was like cringing and not wanting to look. It was uncomfortable. But it kind of feels good to hate the bad guy. And so I feel guilty that, like, a character died for my enjoyment through this, like, back. And I suspect most people would align with my views. Maybe not everybody, obviously.
I mean, I felt great. I was hype. I was like, yo, that bitch got cut.
Yo,
I kept thinking about,
bitch, your head over there. Yeah,
have you ever seen Shiki? There's a scene similar to this in Shiki that is way more memorable because of the fact that it is has more interesting moral implications to it.
Sure.
This was like the most brutal thing I'd seen since then, and I was like, yes, give me the crazy shit,
man. I did not expect this
in
at
a
all.
way, the gratification for me was that, like, I had always kind of, that particular character, when she first arrived, I had seen it almost as like giving the main character like a waifu. And granted, he actually is married, which I had forgotten until we did our podcast last time. And they finally bring the wife and kid into the picture this time. But, like, the fact that they had introduced this character who was almost like too good to be true. She's all about justice, just like him.
Yeah.
She's like a perfect partner. And, like, at first I thought she must be Magase herself, but then that turns out to not be the case. But, like, to have that character then murdered just to, like, take another thing away from the main character, so to speak, it was just okay, now I get it. Like, now I get why these characters existed, was so that they could be killed, And I don't know, it was entertaining.
I guess one last point, speaking of this, because in that scene it was horrific, but it was it was animated kind of beautifully. And it looked really good. And I don't know about, like, in the scene when I shows up at the end. Again, I heard the thing that I was talking about last time. I don't know if it's like her official song or her title track or whatever it is. But, like, again, I hear the whispering in my ears when, like, she's on screen, which I feel is like playing into her seductive powers or whatever.
Well, now we know why, because she literally whispers in your ear
and then you
die.
You, so. But in general, just looking at the show, coming at it fresh, watching these 2 episodes, I just kind of felt like a lot of the show is very kind of stock and not particularly impressively animated. There's a lot of just, like, average old men who don't look, amazing or anything. But I couldn't help feeling like, I just like the way this show looks. I think it looks pretty good most of the time. And there were highlights, obviously, but I don't know. There's lots of, like, little extra details that they didn't have to put in.
I find myself, I get sucked into it because, like, at the start of episode 6, looking at it again, I was like, oh yeah, this show does not look that great. But then, you get into the tone, you follow the scene, and eventually you're wrapped up in it. And when it does dramatic moments, it does them well.
As soon as I saw Zen, as I started watching episode 6, I just thought to myself, like, I like this style. I like the depiction of this character.
Yeah.
I mean, he has the most interesting design of these, like, average, generic Japanese old men or whatever, but, but still. Really fucked up time watching these episodes. Yeah. But
all
good.
Right, well,
it's worth it.
Goddamn, we got a whole hour out of 2 episodes. Can't wait to see where the show's going to go next.
Yep.
If you're following the KHANTEHNT channel, if you want to discuss these shows episode by episode, by the way, with us, we created a subreddit for KHANTEHNT, linked in the description, which is partially, like, part of the intent of it, I almost knocked my camera over. Part of the intent of this subreddit is to notify us of episodes like these ones. Like, if something crazy happens and you're like, you guys gotta cover it, we'll do like an emergency episode where we cover some really crazy shit. I mean, this is kind of an example. I mean, it worked out well enough that we could just do a regular episode anyways because we had a slot open.
Right.
If you thought we were gonna do Pokemon, apologies. Nate already almost beat the game.
I'm almost
we
there.
were gonna do first impressions, and
we can still
instead
do that. We can still do that. I don't care.
What, do a first impressions episode? How? You have all the impressions.
I got most of the impressions. I don't know.
But anyway, we'll be doing Pokemon next. I'm doing away with the whole anime on Tuesdays, other stuff on Fridays. It's just Tuesdays and Fridays we upload whatever is relevant because, you know, in order to stay on top of things, we have to really be on our toes.
This is chaos. There's no order in this world. You're implementing too many radical transformations to our legal system. The people won't be able to keep up. You monster.
So yeah, join us every Tuesday, every Thursday. Check out our other channels, all our other stuff in the description.
Please do.
Oh, and let us know, like, there's also a thread about this on the KHANTEHNT subreddit, but let us know if you think that we should open like a Patreon for this channel sometime soon. Yeah. I mean, we're going to do it eventually, one way or another, but would you rather have it sooner? We plan to have like $3 bonus episodes. That'll be my plan is to have us do a show called Oy Vey, where we talk about OVAs that
that's
are like
good.
1 episode long and under like 1 episode under 45-minute OVAs, and we'll just do one of those, 2 of those a month.
Oh, that's perfect. I love it.
Yeah, and that'll be our bonus episode content. So let us know if you want us to get started on that. If you would pay for another, I know, Nate, don't you have like 5 Patreons for different?
Let me think. Okay, Best Guy Ever, PCP Minecraft, Podcast. I believe that's it. I believe
and
that's
then
it. This will be 5. This will be 5.
Yeah.
They're all separate ventures, man. It's justified. It's justified.
Yeah. So if you want to give Nate money a different way,
I need it, people.
Let us
fund
know.
my move out so we can do these kind of things.
Well, that's what this is. This whole KHANTEHNT channel is all building towards launching a Kickstarter or Indiegogo or something to get you moved down here. So
if I had $4,000 extra dollars today, I'd do it today.
All right, everybody.
There you go.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't kill yourself. Or do. It's up to you.
KHANTENT!